Howdy, guys. Attorney Walter Hnot. I wanted to go ahead and go through something that happened at the Social Security Administration, and it's not good. Now, I want to preface this. I want to give it a beginning so that you understand the basics. The big thing, the statement made by many individuals who worked with the Social Security Administration, not for, but with the Social Security Administration, we all knew one thing in particular. And that one thing, howdy, Linda Soto, that one thing in particular that people who worked with the Social Security Administration was that no one at the SSA would ever get fired. That was a standard, that was common knowledge. Somebody might scream out horrible things. One of them did at the hearing office against me when I was working on a file. They lost literally their emotional state. They were screaming, they were yelling, they were saying horrible things. Not so much about me, more about the file. But the bottom line was they were completely out of line. Had they worked for a corporation, they would have been fired. But at the SSA, and then that person did it again to another attorney like 2 weeks later. But the bottom line is, it is common knowledge among people who work with the SSA that people at the SSA, once you're hired, you don't get fired. Now, I know a lot of the horrible stories, a lot of the background things that occurred with certain employees there, both in the SSA and things they did outside of the SSA, which would normally equate to termination. That's just the bottom line. I've obviously been around long enough to see that stuff. You don't ever see me talking about it because it's not relevant to you getting benefits. However, this right here, this bad thing that happened is relevant to you getting, keeping, etc. your benefits. This article is specifically from the Washington Post, July 12th, 2022, 10:30 a.m. today, this morning. This was written. Top Social Security official keeps job after reports of being impaired at work. Okay. When the Social Security Administration's Inspector General investigated allegations earlier this year that one of the agency's senior leaders was routinely impaired on the job, 6 witnesses painted an alarming picture. Teresa Gruber, a deputy commissioner overseeing around 9,000 employees and a $1.2 billion budget in the hearings and appeals operation, displayed significant anomalies at work over the course of at least a year, including slurred speech in which she appeared intoxicated, leaving meetings without notice, slouching in her chair, and aggressive behavior, witnesses told the investigator. But 5 months after acting Social Security Commissioner Kilolo Kijikazi was presented with the internal report, which the Washington Post obtained, Gruber remains on the job. The allegations by witnesses were corroborated to the Post by 3 members of Gruber's senior staff who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss internal matters. In recent months, Inspector General Gail Ennis's office has received more formal complaints about Gruber's conduct, according to people with knowledge of the communications. She has continued to act erratically, 3 agency employees said, and in recent weeks has missed several meetings of her leadership team. Now, to be fair, the SSA has more meetings than any other group that I know. They're constantly in meetings about meetings. They're in daily meetings. They're in basically every 3-day meetings. They're in weekly meetings, bi-weekly meetings, monthly meetings, quarterly meetings, and yearly meetings. They're in their meetings all day long, all the time. Gruber, and so if you look at a bunch of these team executives, they do miss them from time to time. Gruber, who was not interviewed by investigators contrary to standard practice in administrative probes, declined to comment for this article. That's interesting there. I'll read it again. Gruber was not interviewed by investigators contrary to standard practice. What's going on? Staff members told investigators that while they did not directly witness Gruber consuming alcohol on the job, her comportment led them to wonder whether she had been drinking. I don't have my glasses on, guys. My apologies. I can't because the lights, they shine and make those little rings. Gruber, 53, is also diabetic, the report notes, a condition that when poorly treated can cause irritability, disorientation, or slurred speech. She told a close circle of colleagues that she was dealing with medical issues stemming from the condition, according to the report. Witnesses told investigators that whatever the cause, Gruber's conduct has affected her management of the agency's Office of Hearing Operations. That's like your ALJs, your AAJs. That's up there stuff. Appeals Council, OHO, that kind of stuff, which runs one of the largest administrative judicial systems in the world. You know, like how I applied to become an ALJ? She was the head of that. Well, she is the head of that office. One high-ranking official interviewed by the Post described a rudderless department under Gruber, who sometimes does not communicate with her staff for days at a time. The official said she is MIA and they're not holding anyone accountable, said this person, who spoke on the condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to discuss matters publicly. Another official described delays to decision-making and important meetings and difficulty getting Gruber's attention. Factors, they said, threaten the department's mission to conduct impartial hearings and issue decisions on appeals involving retirement and survivor and disability benefits for poor and elderly Americans. Let me take a moment to read that again. In important meetings, difficulty getting Gruber's attention. This involved factors, they say, threaten the department's mission to conduct impartial hearings and issue decisions on appeals involving retirement, survivors, and disability benefits for poor and elderly Americans. If you can't do this job anymore, honestly, you should be raising your hand to say, I can't do 100% anymore, said another person on Gruber's staff, who expressed frustration that nothing has been done. The investigation designated a preliminary inquiry before it was sent to Commissioner Kijikazi in February. It took place as Social Security faces heightened scrutiny on Capitol Hill, with the agency struggling to fully restart its field operations after a more than 2-year closure during the pandemic, and its Inspector General facing multiple probes into huge fines the office imposed on disabled and elderly people. Commissioner Kijikazi, whom President Biden named acting commissioner a year ago, had also had a strained relationship with Ennis, whose office is charged with oversight the agency that distributes retirement benefits to 69 million Americans and monthly disability checks to about 15 million others, according to the people familiar with their association. Commissioner Kijikazi's staff is investigating Ennis's management of an anti-fraud program that inflated penalties as high as hundreds of thousands of dollars against poor, elderly, and disabled claimants accused of taking benefits to which they were not entitled. The acting commissioner announced she would investigate following a report by the Post in May. The program has been paused indefinitely. Mark Hinkle, a Social Security spokesman, wrote in an email that due to privacy mandates, we cannot comment on any supposed circumstance of the contents of the Inspector General's report on Gruber. When we receive allegations relating to potential personnel issues, including those involving executives or managers, we take appropriate action as necessary, he wrote. It's your blanket statement. It's your template. Okay. Hinkle defended the work of Gruber's department during her tenure, writing that, notice how he said that, during her tenure? Writing that wait times for disability benefits hearings have steadily decreased from a high in 2017, and the number of hearings pending is approaching a 21-year low. He added, given this and the information available, we have confidence in the Office of Hearing Operations leadership. Experts on federal government operations said the apparent inaction could lead employees to hesitate to report management problems in the future. So what they're saying is Commissioner Kijikazi's in action with this thing, taking the reins on this thing, the investigation with this thing has caused potential fear of future, whistleblowers, bell ringers from bringing this information forward in the future, which is true. It's got a cooling effect. Okay. The leadership of the Social Security is clearly protecting one of their own. Nick Schwellenbach, a senior investigator for the Project on Government Oversight, which monitors the work of federal inspector generals and advocates for reforms to the system, said after the Post described the allegations to him, if you're just sweeping the problem under the rug, that's the kind of thing that kills public confidence in the federal agencies. He's right. I mean, it's true. The inquiry was launched by Ennis's staff in December. The report notes after the watchdog's office received a complaint about Gruber, a career civil servant who has worked in the Social Security for 31 years, making her way for claims representatives at a Minnesota field office to a promotion in 2015 to one of the agency's most powerful roles. Her department manages 500,000 hearings and appeals a year for claimants seeking disability, retirement, and survivor benefits, with more than 1,500 administrative law judges and staffers in 10 regions and close to 170 local hearing offices. And that was one of the jobs I applied for. Gruber's staff members described the Post an at times innovative, decisive, empowering leader who won praise for overseeing efforts to reduce a well-publicized backlog of disability hearings and more recently for transitioning her employees to remote work during the coronavirus pandemic. Those staffers also called her an outspoken manager who can be gruff and more recently crossed a line into intense anger, often for unimportant issues. The report said the witnesses described escalating problems at work, conduct that appeared to have been common knowledge in her department. Investigators wrote her demeanor would sometimes improve, though only sporadically. Some on Gruber's staff witnessed her unable to recall things that were just stated or decisions she had recently made, according to the Inspector General's report. They described needing to remind her of meetings on her calendar or her not showing up to meetings altogether. Sometimes she would get upset during meetings, log off, and then fail to return phone calls or emails when staffers tried to contact her. One employee told investigators that some of Gruber's aides would resort to preventing her from making significant decisions on days when she acted impaired. Others said she had begun delegating decisions. Those jobs are always delegating decisions, so that one you got to be a little bit careful of. The behavior was witnessed in meetings large and small on Microsoft Teams. The video conference software Social Security is used to communicate during the pandemic. In attendance were regional chief judges, regional management officers, and administrative law judges, the report said. Some employees were so alarmed during gatherings that they would send instant messages questioning her behavior and speculating about whether she had been drinking, according to investigators. One person on Gruber's staff told investigators that her behavior changes extended beyond their professional interactions and involved after-hours personal calls in which she seemed impaired, and the report said. It is unclear why NS's staff did not interview Gruber, a customary practice in an Inspector General investigation, 3 federal watchdogs said. The report concluded, here's the end of it, by referring its findings to the agency for any administrative action deemed warranted, and asked for a written response explaining the final disposition or administrative action to be taken. So they expect something to happen here. The report said that the Inspector General's office took no position on the imposition of administrative actions against Gruber, meaning that they didn't come up with how she should be punished. The investigation was not released publicly. Inspector Generals have varying practices on disclosing reports on senior leaders as they seek a balance between protecting staff privacy and exposing harmful conduct. And then you can add to that keeping it from the American people because they want people to believe in the system, which I get that, but we deserve to know. If a leader can't perform their job, it violates one of the key principles of the federal merit system to manage employees efficiently and effectively. The more senior the leaders, the less privacy they tend to be afforded, said several inspectors general who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss sensitive matters. In cases when an employee displays conduct that affects their ability to work, it is standard practice of federal agencies for managers to ask their personnel departments to do an internal review, then recommend that the employee take medical leave to address the issue, particularly in cases of drug or alcohol abuse, according to experts on federal government operations and written policies. That's the standard, that's the policy. NS's office gave Kijikazi 60 days to respond in writing, and that's big. NS's inspectors, right? They're dictating to Commissioner Kijikazi, the head of the agency, that you've got 60 days to respond in writing to its report on Gruber. For reasons that are unclear, the Inspector General did not complete its investigation to produce a full report. So it does seem like, Team Commissioner Kijikazi, maybe there's something going on there. Maybe they're protecting one of their own executives. We don't know, but it seems like there's something going on here. A spokeswoman for NS declined in an email to confirm or deny the report. The spokeswoman, who refers to be named, wrote that Social Security is solely responsible for any personnel actions stemming from an investigation of an agency employee. Asked why Gruber was not interviewed, the spokeswoman wrote that the office does not disclose techniques and procedures related to its law enforcement investigations. Investigations conducted by the Inspector General are not public documents, the spokeswoman wrote, a policy at odds with major watchdog offices in the federal government. So I want to ask you guys, Do you feel that investigations conducted by inspector generals should be open to the general public? I think that's a decent question. I think that's an honest question. I think we maybe deserve to go ahead and know about what's going on. Just something to think about. Guys, I also want to tell you at the middle of this that basically, before I share with you the next thing, this is from personal experience about what I see happening with these executive figures in these types of jobs and positions. I just wanted to post, please like, please subscribe, and in the chat section, there's the link for the 5 stars. They always help me compete against the big box firms. Now, I'm about to tell you something about retirement benefits, Social Security benefits, disability benefits, the executives. I'm about to tell you something that a lot of you will not know. And that's because this comes from an industry that a lot of you do not have access to. High-level attorneys, high-level judges, or judges in general, but usually not traffic court judges, executives in the government, a drinking problem is very, very common. In fact, it was so common back in the day that in the law journals, as you would turn through them, go towards the end of them on the back pages of them, they would usually have specific facilities in place to dry out judges and attorneys. And the reality of it is that drinking was much more common back in the day. And the reality of it is that judges and attorneys and executives in these government agencies did do drinking to some degree. You'll notice in many of the TV shows that when you would go into an executive's office, they would have alcohol and present a drink to the person they were interacting with. And this was common practice. Obviously, they're no longer doing that. But as you know, now judges and attorneys would have what was called a lush problem. A lush problem is basically where they would usually use and abuse too much alcohol. And it's from the stress of the job. I mean, look at us. It's 12:09 a.m. It's the next day. It's July 13th. And we're online giving you an update. So it's a very stressful job. We're constantly working and we're constantly holding in our hands the future of people and their livelihood and their success as a human being in this country. So it's an extremely stressful job. Now, the underlying factor is this. The people who work with the Social Security Administration know, okay, they know that people at the SSA usually do not get fired. They can do horrible things. They can be off track. They can do all that stuff. They usually don't get fired. I've seen people do horrendous things. I know some people who have done horrendous things, but they usually don't get fired. Does this person deserve to get fired? That's a question I think you guys should answer, but not hastily. This person has worked consistently with the federal government all the way from the bottom to the top, and they've done a great job, but they ran into a problem. I don't think firing this individual is necessarily the right track. In fact, I disagree with that. I don't think they should fire them. I think basically the SSA with their executives should figure out a path, some options to give her to dry out from whatever problem she's having, medically induced or not, so that she has the capacity to return back to the position that she was at in a more clean state. And here's my reasoning as to why I think that is incredibly important. And I see this thing is, sorry guys, that wasn't pulled all the way. And I think this is the reason as to why this is important. One thing many people in America do not realize is that in order to have judges, appellate judges, these high-level managers overseeing a massive, and I mean massive, amount of other employees, these have to be highly educated, highly trained, highly experienced individuals. When you have a judge that has a problem, you do whatever you can to get that judge back on track, because the time it takes to train one of those judges is immense. Oh, it's massive. They have to learn all the information, have strong analytical skills, be very bright, and basically be consistent. Very difficult. This is not something where it's like a job where you're mopping and anybody can just grab the mop and do it. This is a job where very few people in America have the capacity to actually do that specific job. So with that said, with these high levels, you usually see them working with people to try and get them to get back to the point where they can continue to work the job. Also, with that said, she does have a stellar record, an absolutely stellar record. So the point is, guys, you let me know. Do you think she should have to step down and no longer do these representations for the higher level adjudication based groups at the SSA? Or do you believe that they should work with her and give her options to get out of this situation, achieve certain things, and continue to do her work? I think that's probably the better choice here. I think it's the better choice here, but I don't think Commissioner Kijikazi and the other SSA reps handled this properly. They should have handled this back in February. Now it's blown up and become a monster in July. And as a result of that, we now have a bad culture. And the culture of the SSA now has devolved because people lower than the executives that are there are now afraid to report on those executives. Because the bottom line is, if they don't punish the executive, then the executive is going to punish those who reported. So that's the worst part of this. Inaction on behalf of the executives. And it's so high up the ladder that the real person who's in trouble here as a result of inaction is somebody we actually want to really succeed, which is Commissioner Kijikazi. So with that said, let's see what she does, open mind, and keep it rolling. Guys, I will catch you a little bit later. I'm going to be doing one more video tonight. I think it's an incredibly important video. Please remember to like, subscribe, and leave 5-star reviews. I put the little thingy in the top chat. Remember, let me know in the comments what you think. Fire the person, punish the person, what should the punishment be, or potentially do nothing. These are some basic things. There you go. There you go. I really thank you. Thank you for the $5 donation, Liberty. Love it. Love it. Love it. So anyways, I will catch you guys a little bit later. Have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful night, and we'll go from there. Thanks so much. All right. Bye-bye, guys. Bye-bye.